What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees, and welcome to week 6 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2022 CFL season. And ladies and gentlemen, it is Touchdown Atlantic week. The CFL returns to the east coast of Canada. The Maritime Provinces. Touchdown Atlantic is back for the first time since I believe 2019 was the last Touchdown Atlantic game. I think that was the Argos and the Alouettes. This time around, it is going to be the Argos and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The first time the Roughriders have made the trip down for Touchdown Atlantic. Exceptionally exciting time all around Nova Scotia this week. There's a big multi-day festival going on in Halifax to celebrate our love for the Canadian football game and for the CFL on the East Coast. So that just underscores an excellent week of CFL football that we have to come. Now, taking a look at last week, a bit of a stumble again. We were only 5-4 in the 3 games that were presented to us in week 5. 2-1 straight up and 2-1 on the totals. Hashtag over season is here. I only went 1-2 against the spread. Now, look, that does mean I'm only, 12-9 over the last 2 weeks. I have nothing but confidence we're going to kick it back into high gear here in week 6. 16-3 straight up on the season, 14-5 against the spread, and 12-7 on the totals. Means we're off to a 42-15 heater early on in the season here, 73.7%. This week, the recording schedule is it's a little hassled. It's a little rushed just because of my other commitments outside of this. So I don't have a CFL fantasy roster for you in this video. I will have it in the pinned comment, in the top comment down below once I solidify what that roster is going to be. That'll, of course, come ahead of the games this week, so keep an eye out for that. Pretty darn good week again last week in CFL Fantasy. Another 100-point week. 104.8 was what I brought in week 5, and that was headlined by my MVP performance. Winnipeg Blue Bombers wide receiver Dalton Schoen, rookie receiver, and again, he was min money, $2,500, really only needs about 7 points in order to really hit full value there. He did much more than that. He did, in fact, better than 4 times that, catching 8 balls for 117 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns in that big win from the Bombers over the BC Lions. It was good for 31.7 fantasy points, and on the season, I'm sitting with a very healthy 452.9. That is good enough in the official Atlantic Schooners CFL Fantasy Football League to be 8th place now out of 47. That is increase of another 4 spots from last week. Look, we've gone from, 21 to 12 to 8 over the last just couple of weeks. So once again, I don't have a roster for you for week 6 in CFL Fantasy. That is going to be in the pinned comment down below. So without further ado, let's get into our slate of games here for week 6. Again, it's going to be a fast-paced episode. Try and keep up, quote unquote. Week 6, we got 4 games on the schedule. The BC Lions, coming off the loss last week, are on the natural bye. And all of these lines are coming from Sports Interaction again, because once again, no other bookie has the nuts to put lines out, apparently. So this is all coming from Sports Interaction. The Edmonton Elks are in Montreal taking on the Alouettes, who just made some really interesting front office changes that we'll talk about. The Calgary Stampeders are in Winnipeg taking on the Blue Bombers. We've got Saskatchewan and Toronto, of course, playing on a neutral site game for Touchdown Atlantic here in lovely Nova Scotia. And we've got the Ottawa REDBLACKS on the road in Hamilton taking on the Ticats. Let's start with that battle of who the hell is going to play quarterback. The Edmonton Elks on the road in Montreal taking on the Alouettes. Both of these teams losers their last time on a football field. Edmonton 1-4 now on the season. Last week getting absolutely blown out by the Calgary Stampeders. That game was in Edmonton. 49-6. Calgary putting on an absolute clinic. And here's the challenge. Find the good in a game that you lost by over 40 points. Great. If I had to give somebody on that Elks team the MVP from that game, I guess it's probably American linebacker Matthew Thomas. He had 8 tackles. He had 2 quarterback sacks. I believe the only 2 quarterback sacks that the Elks registered in that game. And look, on a defense that allowed 470 total yards, there were no other MVPs on the defensive side as far as I'm concerned. So shout out to Matthew Thomas. They ran the ball okay, 17 carries for 88 yards as a team. I think that's about it. The Elks quarterbacking carousel going to continue this week. Nick Arbuckle first was benched and has now been traded away to another team, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Trey Ford is injured. He's probably not going to play, or he's definitely not going to play. Kai Loxley may not play. He's dealing with an injury as well. The Elks have turned to Taylor Cornelius. Remember that name from last year? Taylor Cornelius will draw the start here in week 6. This is either the third, I think it's the third different quarterback to start for the Elks already this season. Not a good sign when you've gotten back to old Taylor. The Alouettes come into this game 1-3 on the season, coming into the game off of their bye, so that's got to feel good, but they did lose last time out 2 weeks ago in Saskatchewan, pretty comfortably 41-20 at Mosaic Stadium against the Riders, and after that blowout win in week 3, which again, it wasn't a shock that they blew the Riders out in that game. They got humbled in the rematch, completely, absolutely humbled in most aspects of that game. Relatively close matchup in the first half, and then the second half, they just got thoroughly outcoached. It's like the Riders coached their guys up and the Owls didn't. They got outscored 30-7 in the second half of that game. Trevor Harris was mediocre yet again. He did complete 69% of his passes, but did not reach 200 yards passing and threw 2 interceptions without a touchdown. The Montreal Alouettes in their bye week firing head coach Kahari Jones and defensive coordinator, defensive play caller Baron Miles. So they've made a bunch of head office changes. I believe Machocha, the GM, is now back on the sidelines. He's going to be the head coach. They brought Anthony Calvillo back in to be the offensive play caller. There's a lot of moving pieces here for the Alouettes into this game. They lost heavily in that game at the line of scrimmage. They allowed their quarterback to be sacked 6 times. They only generated 2 quarterback sacks themselves. They allowed 6.5 yards per carry in the run game, and they had no discipline. And this is the biggest reason that Kahari Jones is no longer the coach of the Montreal Alouettes. It's the discipline. What else can I keep saying? I talk about it every single week. 11 penalties for 105 yards. If I sound like a broken record, there's a reason for that. It's the primary reason that a head coach in the CFL no longer has his job. So there's a reason that I talk about this. Taylor Cornelius had flashes of being okay in the 2021 season. He had a 6-game stretch between weeks 9 and 15 last year where he threw for 1,365 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 4 picks. That's serviceable. That's a serviceable 6-game stretch. But in the other 3 games that he played, he threw for 430 yards, no touchdowns, and 9 picks. So he was either serviceable or atrocious. And I'm sorry, I'm staying away from any team that's being quarterbacked by Taylor Cornelius. I'm going to grab the Montreal Alouettes here. Montreal at home. Their only home game so far this year was a big win, so let's see if they can feed off that home crowd. Now on the line, Montreal's laying 7.5 points. Ugh. What have we seen from the Alouettes this year that would tell you that it's good to justify laying 7.5 points on this 1-3 team? I don't think the Owls have shown us anything to justify that. I'm going to take the points here with the Elks just because that to me is too high scoring of a matchup there. I don't think Montreal is that much better than the Edmonton Elks. I think the teams at the bottom of this league are closer than we would like to maybe admit. So I'm taking the 7.5 points with Edmonton. Who knows? Something could happen. They might win this thing. Total in the game set at 48.5 points. I'm going to stick under on it, and that's the Taylor Cornelius factor right there. It is hashtag over season, but clearly this week it is also hashtag Taylor Cornelius season, so I ain't doing it. Let's stick under 48.5 points in Montreal, Edmonton. We're going to go Alouettes 23, Elks 17. Montreal wins, Edmonton covers. Let's move on now to Winnipeg. Calgary in Winnipeg to take on the Bombers. Stamps Bombers. Definitely going to be probably the best pound-for-pound football game of this week. Obviously, I'm more personally excited about Touchdown Atlantic, which is the next game we'll be talking about. But Calgary, Winnipeg, if you love football, this is the football game to watch. I believe I guess these are the last two undefeated teams left in the CFL. Calgary at 4-0 and the Bombers at 5-0. Calgary comes into this game on the tail end of back-to-back road games, but off of that aforementioned 49-6 beatdown in Edmonton of the Elks. It was only 14-3 at halftime. So at halftime, this was a fairly measured competitive football game, but after that, it most closely resembled a kid wrestling with his dad. Like, Edmonton had nothing for them after the first half. Calgary did everything great. Sometimes there's precious little to say about it. Calgary ran the ball great. They threw the ball great. They defended great when they didn't have the ball. Their special teams were great. They were great on first down. Their turnover ratio was 4-2. They were great in all aspects of the football game. If there is a downside to blowing out an opponent that badly, it's that rubber very seldom sharpens steel. We can put it that way. Like, a team that is not really competitive with you doesn't really make you better, right? Like, you dominate them, you blow them out. That's great. You're feeling pretty good. You're feeling like you can do anything. And then you run into a buzzsaw. And that might be kind of what happened to BC last week. They ran into the buzzsaw that was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which is the same buzzsaw that Calgary has to play this week. So if there is a downside, easy games can kind of make good teams fat and happy. Bombers sitting pretty at 5-0 so far on the year, coming off of that aforementioned 43-22 win in BC against the Lions. Probably not the caliber of game that we were looking for, or that we had it kind of built up in our heads coming into things, because like you were expecting obviously a much closer, much more competitive game. And aside from the second quarter flurry from Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions, the Bombers were just able to keep that potent BC offense in check. They possessed the ball for 39 minutes in that game. It's awfully tough to win games when you only possess the ball for 21 minutes. The carries were 29-8, and I understand that like BC spotted Winnipeg the first 24 points of the game, so the run game essentially died from that point. So I understand that, but they were so committed to the run game were the Blue Bombers that it made it very difficult. And of course, the turnover ratio, it was 4-0. BC generated no turnovers. Winnipeg generated 4. So no shock to me that the Bombers wound up winning this thing walking away. Zach Collaros was hyper efficient in that game, 77% on his passes for 288 and 3 scores. We finally saw Johnny Augustine take the lead back role in this game. I think he performed up to it. I'll be interested to see what happens there. Wouldn't be shocked to see him take the lead back role in this game again. And we already talked about it. Wow, Dalton Schoen, what an incredible performance. Could be worth asking the question, is this the game that BC Winnipeg wasn't? Could this game potentially be a sleeper preview of the West Division final? The Stamps are only 44-61 all time in Winnipeg. They've also lost 4 straight games in Winnipeg against the Bombers. This is also Winnipeg's 8th straight game, including preseason. They're one of only 3 teams who have not had a bye week yet in the CFL season. It's definitely something to think about, whether fatigue could be setting in, and it's worth thinking, are the Stamps just plain old due? I'm going to make Bombers fans really mad, I think. Let's do it. Calgary upsets Winnipeg in Winnipeg. Stamps beat the Blue Bombers. I think they're just due. These are 2 incredible football teams. They play each other twice more this season. We get to see this game 2 more times this year. I'm just going to give round 1 of this 3-round championship fight, potentially. I'm going to give it to the underdog Stamps. Let's take Calgary on the road in Winnipeg to beat the Bombers. Now, against the spread, Calgary is taking 4.5 points here as the road dog. I like them to win outright, so obviously I'm taking those 4.5 points. But I want you to think about this, because this number varies in a couple of spots. But even if it varies, even if you're only getting like a +3, I want you to consider something. Here are the scores of the last 5 games head-to-head between Calgary and Winnipeg in Winnipeg. Winnipeg wins 18-16. Winnipeg wins 26-24. Winnipeg wins 29-28. Winnipeg wins 29-21. Calgary wins 29-10. Calgary plus 4.5 feels like the play here, no matter whether you like them to win or not. These two teams play close games. Total in the game set at 46.5. Hashtag over season. Only Saskatchewan and Ottawa missed the over last week. They stayed under, and that was only after 0 points were scored in the fourth quarter, which is like almost unfathomable in the CFL. So we're going to go with the over on this one. It's a very achievable number. Let's go over 46.5 points in Winnipeg, Calgary. We are going to go Stamps 24, Bombers 23. Calgary might win it on a last-second field goal. Calgary gets the upset win in Winnipeg. Now, before we move on to Touchdown Atlantic and continue with Week 6 in the CFL, I'm going to take this opportunity, as I always do, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at Nerd Tees. And of course, since this is a very Nova Scotian episode, I'm Nova Scotian. We got Halifax Mooseheads on the cap. We've got Trailer Park Boys on the graphic t-shirt. Why not represent the great province of Nova Scotia in our Nerd Tees selection this week as well? This week's blend is blueberry. Nova Scotia is renowned, known worldwide for the quality of its blueberries. And boy, this blueberry tea, this is just something special. Nerdtees.ca. You're going to want to hit that promo code BWFinest because that's going to give you 15% off on any order that you make from Nerdtees.ca. You're also going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100. And if you're a US viewer, don't worry, you get an excellent conversion rate on the US dollar from nerdtees.ca. Use that promo code BWFinest, save your 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, find yourself something very Nova Scotian, or find someone you love something to love. Maybe fall in love with a Nova Scotian, who knows? You can do it at nerdtees.ca. Let's talk about Touchdown Atlantic. Touchdown Atlantic, ladies and gentlemen, this year is the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Toronto Argonauts coming to you live from Nova Scotia. Saski 4-1 on the season this year, winners of 2 straight games. Last week, better than doubling up the Ottawa REDBLACKS 28-13. They built up a lead of 22-6 at halftime, pitching that fourth quarter shutout like we talked about a little bit earlier, where their game wound up under by a couple of points. It's still hashtag over season, don't you worry, but that Riders defense in Saskatchewan is almost untouchable. Cody Fajardo, hyper-efficient throwing the football, 77% on his passes, 231 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. They ran for 26 carries for $181 and a rush touchdown as a team, so they absolutely pounded the ball on the ground. All was not the greatest because we did have the Garrett Marino incident with Jeremiah Masoli. Garrett Marino has been suspended for a cumulative 4 games, which is a record in the CFL for a player suspension. Looks like Jeremiah Masoli is going to be missing himself some time for the Ottawa REDBLACKS. So not all was fantastic for Saski, but I tell you, the one element of the game that really was, and once again, we got to go back to that run game, man. Morrow and Hickson are, I think, shaping up to be everything that Winnipeg wants Brady Oliveira and Johnny Augustine to be. Those two combined to touch the ball 28 times, 239 all-purpose yards between the run game, the receiving game, and the return game. And of course, they had the Hickson rush touchdown, a massive rush touchdown from Hickson. And look, that ground game, if this is a two-headed monster that's developing, but they're both really serviceable, Saski's going to be damn near impossible to beat. And they're only a short time away from getting Kyron Moore back at receiver and having a 1-2-3 punch of Duke, Kyron Moore, and KSB. Good luck, everybody else. Toronto Argos are going to come into this game off of their second bye of the season already. They've only played 3 games. They're only 1-2, losers of 2 straight after opening the season with a 1-point win. 2 weeks ago, they dropped a 1-point loss against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, 23-22. They probably deserved to win that game, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. They certainly did not deserve to lose the way that they lost. If you'll remember, they lost on that Boris Beatty missed extra point that would have tied the game within the last, I think, whatever it was, the last 40 seconds. So they certainly didn't deserve to lose the game the way they lost the game. Andrew Harris and Brandon Banks showed out once again for the Argos. Harris, 124 all-purpose yards. Banks caught 5 balls for 95 yards and a touchdown. That was part of 426 total yards that the Argos put up on offense. McLeod Bethel-Thompson, 314 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, but he did throw 2 picks, and that did definitely lead to some situations that kept Winnipeg in the game. And look, it's in games like this, it's in opponents like Winnipeg that the little things become the big things. The little things, look, we only generated 1 turnover off of them. That's okay if you don't turn the ball over or you only maybe give up 1. They gave up 4. So the little things became the big things. They only got 1 quarterback sack, which you'd like to get more. The other side got 3. Little thing becomes a big thing. They only took 1 more penalty than Winnipeg did, but it was a crucial one. Little thing becomes big things. Then you got the sideline antics between Brandon Banks and you'll have to forgive me, I don't remember the name of the other player. That was bad enough that Pinball Clemens had to come down from the box and get on the sidelines and say, look, enough of this. And a great effort in terms of their total defense, where they only gave up 275 total yards to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, goes to waste because the little things became the big things. I think they're going to find that this week, if the little things become the big things, the next big thing is going to be Saskatchewan's point total on the scoreboard. The Riders are definitely the pick here, but listen, let me just say, whoever wins this game, my genuine hope, my only hope for this game, is that Atlantic Canadian fans show up and show out this weekend and send a message to everyone else in this nation, all 9 teams in the CFL. Send a message to Randy Ambrosie. Send a message to everybody that doubts this, that the CFL belongs on the east coast of Canada. This is a coast-to-coast league. Let's make it one. Show them that you have the passion for this. Show them that this 10th team not only is going to work here, but it's going to thrive here. So we're going to take the Riders in this game. Let's take Saskatchewan over Toronto in Touchdown Atlantic 2022. On the line, Saski's laying 3 points here as the favorite. I like him to win. It's a relatively small price to pay. I'm going to go ahead and lay the 3 points on the better football team, which is the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Total in the game set at 44.5 points. I don't mind going over on this one again. I got last week by the Riders defense, but the game is not in Saskatchewan, so let's see a few extra points, and it's such a small number to have to get over. Over 44.5 points in Saskatchewan, Toronto. Let's take Riders 28, Argos 20. And the last game we're going to look at is the battle of 2 winless franchises so far in this CFL season. The Ottawa REDBLACKS in Hamilton taking on the Ticats. REDBLACKS come into this game on the tail end of back-to-back road games. Hamilton comes into this game off of their bye, their first bye of the season. So this is a tired team coming in to face a well-rested home squad. Ottawa's coming into this game off of that 13-28 loss in Saskatchewan against the Riders. It's as bad as the REDBLACKS have looked all season long, and now they've lost Jeremiah Masoli. So at the very least, Masoli was moving the football up and down the field. Now I don't really know what the REDBLACKS have to hang their hat on offense. I guess William Powell. The REDBLACKS defense actually showed a pass rush for the first time in 2022. They generated 5 sacks. They only have 8 on the season, but they generated 5 in this game. Like I mentioned before, Jeremiah Masoli injured on that low hit by Garrett Marino, so he's going to be gone for quite some time. I know they said, oh, we hope he can play again later this season, but the REDBLACKS, if they thought he was going to play again anytime soon, they would not have gone out and traded for Nick Arbuckle. The Edmonton Elks trade Nick Arbuckle to the Ottawa REDBLACKS. I believe it was a 4th round pick. So Nick Arbuckle is a member now of the Ottawa REDBLACKS. I don't think he starts this week. Wouldn't be shocked to see Caleb Evans get the start this week, but Nick Arbuckle will probably be the QB1 for the REDBLACKS moving forward. I don't know that he's an upgrade over anybody that's an incumbent in that quarterback room, but clearly Ottawa has been left looking for answers for most of this season. For the Ticats, they're 0-4 on the year. At least they're coming in off their bye. But 2 weeks ago, they dropped a 4-point decision against the Edmonton Elks, funny enough, and it happened again. 4 weeks in a row. Hamilton has either held a lead at halftime or been like competitive at halftime. And then they get blown out in the second half. Last week it was 20-6 to a rookie quarterback and the Edmonton Elks without James Wilder. But with that, you get outscored 20-6? Like, what is happening? Talk about coaches that deserve to be fired. I think we should start having this conversation. Dane Evans has not played a game in 2022 where he has not thrown 2 interceptions. Think about that for a second. Look, the Ticats were a little bit better than the Elks on second down, and they took fewer penalties. Other than that, they were the second best team on the football field for the 4th straight game. Once again, I hate to hamper on it, to a rookie quarterback and an Elks team that didn't have their starting running back. This is by far the REDBLACKS' easiest game so far this year. Simply because, like, you had to play Winnipeg twice. Like, they've played a murderer's row of teams, right? I think, what was it, Winnipeg twice, BC, Saskatchewan. Like, they've had to play tough opponents right from the jump, right from the start of the season. So this is by far the REDBLACKS' easiest game. But this is the litmus test for the Hamilton Ticats. If they can't win this game at home, off of a bye, against a team that just lost their starting quarterback, is playing the tail end of back-to-back road games, and has not won a game yet this year, tear it down to the struts and start over. Everybody's fired. I'm going to take the Hamilton Tiger Cats to win this game. They have to. There is no alternative for Hamilton. They have to win this game. I'm going to take them to beat Ottawa. Now, on the line, Hamilton's laying 5.5 points. No. Ottawa plus 5.5. Do not ask me to lay that much juice on a bad team, no matter how bad the other team is on the other side, because we just saw Hamilton lose that game against Edmonton. It was the last time we saw them on a football field. So no, do not ask me to lay that juice. I ain't going to do it. Ottawa plus the 5.5. Total in the game set at 44.5 points. And this is the play this week that I hate the most. Hate it, hate it, hate it. I hate it because I have to betray #overseason. There's too many uncertainties here. I don't know who's playing quarterback for one of the teams. The other team is bad. Both teams are bad. But the defenses can play some football. I don't know where the points are coming from. I have to stay under on this number. It's going to suck when they score 46. It's going to be terrible. I got to stay under 44.5 points in Hamilton, Ottawa, but I am taking the points with Ottawa. Let's go Hamilton 21, Ottawa 16. Hamilton wins, Ottawa covers the plus 5.5. The game stays under. There you have it, folks. Those are your picks for Week 6 in the CFL in the 2022 season. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I've got Montreal beating Edmonton 23-17. I'm taking the plus 7.5 with the Edmonton Elks, and I'm staying under 48.5 points. I got the Calgary Stampeders upsetting the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Winnipeg 24-23. We got Calgary plus the 4.5 points against the spread in a game that goes over 46.5. We've got the Saskatchewan Roughriders defeating the Toronto Argos 28-20 in Touchdown Atlantic 2022. We're laying the 3 points on the favorite Riders in a game that goes over 44.5 points. And we got the Hamilton Ticats at home getting the win over the Ottawa REDBLACKS 21-16. I'm taking the points with the REDBLACKS plus 5.5 in a game that stays under 44.5 points. That's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Week 6 of the CFL season, Touchdown Atlantic week. I hope you'll tune in, see everything that the Nova Scotian football fans have got in store for the CFL. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for following along this season. It's been far and away the most successful start I've had picks-wise and viewership-wise for this show in its 4 seasons. It means the world to me. Thank you so much. We will see you again for lucky week number 7. Let's go Touchdown Atlantic, and let's go week 6 picks.